Katie Dawson had seen many terrible things during her 5 years as a field medic on Varus Station. She had treated wounds from plasma burns, infections from alien bacteria, and injuries that would have killed most humans. But nothing had prepared her for what she found in the waste disposal sector that cold morning. The smell hit her first. It was the smell of sickness, of something dying slowly and painfully. Katie followed it through the narrow corridors where station workers dumped broken equipment and unwanted cargo. The lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. She found the creature behind a pile of rusted containers. At first, she thought it was dead. Its body was massive, roughly the size of a small horse, covered in silver fur that should have been beautiful but was now matted with dried fluids. The creature lay on its side, breathing in short, painful gasps. Its ribs showed clearly through its skin with each breath. Katie moved closer, her medical training overriding her fear. The creature's eyes opened at the sound of her footsteps. They were golden, like liquid sunshine, and filled with so much pain that Katie felt her heart break a little. The creature tried to lift its head, but failed. A weak sound escaped its throat, something between a growl and a whimper. That was when Katie noticed the parasites. They moved beneath the creature's skin like glowing worms, their light pulsing in sickening waves. She could see them clearly through patches where the fur had fallen away. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, crawling through the creature's body. She knew what this creature was. Everyone on Varus Station knew about the Kovathi and their prized war beasts called Velthari. These creatures were legends throughout the galaxy. They were intelligent, loyal, and bonded to their handlers for life. A single Velthari was worth more than most starships. The Kovathi treated them like sacred family members. Yet someone had left this one here to die alone in the garbage. Katie activated her communication device and called station security. Within minutes, she learned the truth. A Kovathi trading delegation had departed Varus Station just 6 hours earlier. Their ship's medical scanner had detected parasites in their Velthari during a routine check. The parasites were identified as skethworms. The security officer's voice was flat when he explained what that meant. Skethworms were considered a death sentence across all known galactic medicine. No species had ever survived an infestation. The Kovathi had followed their ancient protocols. When a Velthari was infected with an incurable disease, abandonment was considered the merciful choice. They believed it was kinder to let the creature die in peace than to watch it suffer through failed treatments. Katie ended the call and looked down at the dying Velthari. Its golden eyes were still watching her. There was something in that gaze, something that reached past the pain and touched something deep inside her. This creature was afraid. It was confused. It did not understand why its family had left it alone in this cold, dark place. She thought about her grandmother back on Earth, a woman who had spent 40 years as a veterinarian in a small town in Montana. Her grandmother had saved countless animals that others had given up on. Dogs hit by cars, cats with cancer, horses with broken legs. She had taught Katie that every life was worth fighting for, no matter how small the chance of success. Katie knelt beside the Velthari and placed her hand gently on its side. The creature flinched at first, then relaxed. Its fur was soft beneath her fingers, softer than anything she had ever touched. She could feel its heart beating, weak but steady. It was still fighting. Even now, even abandoned and alone, this creature was still trying to survive. She made her decision in that moment. She would not let this beautiful creature die alone in the garbage. She would not accept that there was no hope. She was human, and humans did not give up. Katie called Ben Harper, a xenobiologist who worked in the research wing of Varus Station. Ben was a quiet man with kind eyes and a brilliant mind. He had studied alien life forms for 20 years and knew more about extraterrestrial biology than anyone Katie had ever met. He arrived within the hour, carrying a portable scanner and a bag full of medical equipment. His face went pale when he saw the Valkyrie. He scanned the creature 3 times, as if hoping the results would change. They did not. The scathworms had spread throughout the creature's body. They were feeding on its neural tissue, slowly consuming its brain. The toxins they released had nearly shut down its immune system. Ben looked at Katie with sad eyes. He told her the Galactic Medical Database showed a 0% survival rate for scathworm infections. 47 different species had been documented with this parasite. All of them had died. Every single one. Katie asked him if any of those species had been human. Ben paused. He admitted they had not. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community. Their medical knowledge had not yet been fully integrated into alien databases. She asked him another question. Had any of those species ever really tried to cure it? Or had they all simply accepted death as inevitable? Ben did not have an answer for that. Katie stood up and looked at the Valkyrie. It was watching them both now, following their conversation with those intelligent golden eyes. She told Ben that she wanted to try. She wanted to fight for this creature's life. She knew the odds were against them. She knew they might fail, but she also knew that she could not walk away. Ben was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. He told her she was probably crazy. He told her this would likely end in heartbreak. But he also told her that he would help, because that was what humans did. They fought impossible battles. They refused to accept defeat. And sometimes, just sometimes, they won. Together, they lifted the massive creature onto a hovercart. It took all their strength, but the Valkyrie did not resist. It seemed to understand that these strange beings were trying to help. As they wheeled it through the corridors toward an empty cargo bay, Katie made a silent promise. She would save this creature or die trying. Because hope was never foolish. And giving up was never merciful. It was just giving up. The real fight was about to begin. The cargo bay was cold and smelled like old metal, but Katie worked through the night to make it suitable. She scrubbed every surface with disinfectant. She sealed the ventilation ducts to create a proper quarantine zone. She dragged in every piece of medical equipment she could find or borrow. By morning, the empty room had become a makeshift hospital. The Valkyrie lay on a bed of thermal blankets in the center of the room. Its breathing had grown weaker during the night. The parasites beneath its skin glowed brighter now, pulsing with a sickly green light as they fed on the creature's failing body. Katie had given it water through a tube and injected basic nutrients into its bloodstream, but she knew these measures were only buying time. Ben arrived with armfuls of data tablets and research files. He had spent the entire night studying everything the Galactic Database had on scathworms. The information was not encouraging. These parasites had evolved on a dead world called Vecris 3, a planet that had been quarantined for centuries. They reproduced rapidly, spreading through a host's nervous system within days. Their toxins blocked the immune response, preventing the body from fighting back. Every documented case had ended the same way. Katie listened to all of this, then asked Ben a simple question. How had humans dealt with parasites on Earth? Ben looked at her strangely. He reminded her that Earth parasites and alien parasites were completely different. The biology was not comparable. The treatments that worked on dogs and cats would not work on a creature from another world. Katie disagreed. She pulled up the medical archives from Earth and began searching. Humans had been fighting parasites for thousands of years. Tapeworms, roundworms, heartworms, malaria. These tiny invaders had killed millions of people throughout history. But humans had not accepted defeat. They had studied the parasites, learned their weaknesses, and developed treatments. She found what she was looking for after 3 hours of searching. A rare parasite from the Amazon rainforest had once plagued jungle cats in South America. The parasite had similar characteristics to the scathworms. It fed on neural tissue. It released toxins that suppressed the immune system. It had been considered incurable for decades, but human doctors had refused to give up. They discovered that the parasite could not survive high temperatures. By inducing a controlled fever in the infected cats, they weakened the parasites enough for medication to kill them. The treatment was dangerous. Many animals died from the fever itself, but some survived. And survival, even slim survival, was better than certain death. Ben studied the data with growing interest. He admitted that the biological similarities were remarkable. The scathworms appeared to have the same vulnerability to heat. Their homeworld had been a cold planet with stable temperatures. They had never evolved to handle fever, but there was a problem. The Velthury's normal body temperature was much lower than a human's. Raising it high enough to harm the parasites might kill the creature first. They would be walking a razor's edge between treatment and death. Katie looked at the Velthury. Its golden eyes were open, watching them with that same quiet intelligence. She walked over and knelt beside it. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a question. Katie placed her hand on its head, feeling the warmth of its fur and the faint pulse of its heartbeat. She asked the creature if it wanted to fight. She knew it probably could not understand her words, but she believed it could understand her meaning. The Velthury's eyes met hers. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that went beyond language or species. The creature lifted its head slightly, a movement that must have cost it tremendous effort, and pressed its nose against Katie's palm. Katie looked at Ben. She told him they were going to try. The next several hours were spent in careful preparation. Ben calculated the exact temperature they needed to reach. Too low, and the parasites would survive. Too high, and the Velthury's organs would fail. The margin for error was almost nothing. Katie searched the station's medical supplies for fever-inducing agents. Most were designed for humans and would be toxic to alien physiology. But she found one compound that seemed promising, a synthetic chemical used to treat hypothermia in multiple species. By adjusting the dosage carefully, they could use it to raise the Velthury's temperature in a controlled manner. They also needed something to kill the parasites once they were weakened. Katie remembered ivermectin, a drug that had saved millions of lives on Earth by treating parasitic infections. She did not have ivermectin, but Ben was able to synthesize something similar using the station's laboratory equipment. It took him 8 hours of careful work, testing and adjusting the formula until he believed it would be safe for the Velthury's biology. By the end of the second day, they were ready. Katie sat beside the Velthury, holding its massive paw in her hands. The creature's eyes were half closed, its strength fading with each passing hour. The parasites were winning. They did not have much time left. She explained to Ben what they were about to do. They would inject the fever agent first, raising the creature's temperature slowly over several hours. They would monitor its vital signs constantly, watching for any sign that its body was failing. When the temperature reached the target level, they would inject the antiparasitic compound and hope that the combination would be enough. Ben asked her what they would do if it did not work. Katie was quiet for a moment. Then she said they would try something else. And if that did not work, they would try again. They would keep trying until they ran out of options or until the creature's heart stopped beating. Because that was what it meant to fight for a life. You did not stop until there was nothing left to try. Ben nodded slowly. He prepared the first injection while Katie held the Velthury's head in her lap, stroking its silver fur and whispering words of comfort. The creature's eyes found hers, and she saw something there that looked almost like trust. She promised the creature that she would not give up on it. She promised that she would fight as hard as it was fighting. And she promised that no matter what happened, it would not die alone. The needle slid into the Velthury's vein. The treatment had begun. The first night was the worst. The Valthyre's body began to shake as the fever took hold. Its muscles tensed and relaxed in painful spasms. Sounds came from its throat that Katie had never heard before. Cries of distress that echoed through the cargo bay and tore at her heart. She held the creature's head in her lap, wiping away the foam that formed at the corners of its mouth, whispering words of comfort that she hoped it could somehow understand. Ben monitored the vital signs on his scanner, calling out numbers that Katie barely heard. Temperature rising, heart rate increasing, blood pressure fluctuating. The Valthyre's body was fighting the fever just as hard as it was fighting the parasites. Katie watched the creature suffer and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But then something happened. As the temperature climbed higher, the parasites began to react. Their glow, which had been steady and bright, started to flicker. Katie leaned closer, watching through the patches of thin skin on the creature's belly. The worms were moving erratically now, twisting and coiling as if in pain. The heat was hurting them. She told Ben to hold the temperature steady. He adjusted the medication carefully, keeping the fever at exactly the level they had calculated. The Valthyre continued to shake, but its cries grew quieter. It seemed to understand that something was changing inside its body. Hours passed. Katie lost track of time. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She stayed beside the creature, holding its paw, watching the parasites die one by one. Their light faded slowly, like candles being snuffed out. Each time one went dark, Katie felt a small spark of hope dot by the second morning. More than half the parasites had stopped glowing. But the Valthyre was growing weaker. Its heart was struggling to keep up with the fever. Ben warned Katie that they were approaching the limit of what the creature's body could handle. If they did not act soon, the treatment itself would kill it. Katie made the decision. She told Ben to prepare the antiparasitic compound. They would inject it now, while the remaining parasites were weakened, and hoped that it would be enough to finish the job. Ben filled the syringe with the clear liquid he had synthesized. His hands were steady, but Katie could see the worry in his eyes. This compound had never been tested on a Valthyre. They had no idea how the creature's body would react. They were taking a leap of faith into complete darkness. Katie held the Valthyre's head and looked into its golden eyes. The creature was barely conscious now, exhausted from the fever and the fight. But when Katie spoke, its eyes focused on her face. She told it to hold on just a little longer. She told it that help was coming. Ben injected the compound into the creature's bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Valthyre's body went rigid. Every muscle locked tight. Its back arched off the blankets, and a sound escaped its throat that was almost a scream. Katie held on, refusing to let go even as the creature thrashed. She could see the parasites reacting to the compound. They were dying rapidly now, their glow extinguishing in waves that spread outward from the injection site. But the Valthyre was dying too. Its heart was failing. Its breathing was stopping. She screamed at Ben to do something. He grabbed a cardiac stimulator from his bag and pressed it against the creature's chest. The shock made the Valthyre's body jerk. Nothing. He shocked it again. Still nothing. Katie placed her hands over the creature's heart and began pushing, performing chest compressions the way she had been taught to do on humans. She did not know if it would work on alien physiology. She did not care. She pushed and pushed, counting under her breath, refusing to accept that it was over. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Ben stood frozen, watching with tears in his eyes. Katie kept pushing. Her arms burned with exhaustion. Sweat dripped down her face. But she would not stop. She could not stop. And then, like a miracle, the Valthyre's heart began to beat again. It was weak at first, barely a flutter. But it grew stronger with each passing second. The creature's chest rose and fell with a shaky breath. Its eyes opened, unfocused and confused, but alive. Alive. Katie collapsed beside the creature, too exhausted to move. She lay there with her face pressed against its silver fur, listening to the steady rhythm of its heartbeat. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Ben checked the scanner again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. The parasites were dead. Every single one. Their bodies were already being broken down by the Velthury's immune system, which had roared back to life once the toxins stopped flowing. The neural damage was severe, but it was no longer getting worse. The creature's brain was beginning to heal itself. The next 12 hours were a blur of monitoring and adjustment. Katie slept in short bursts, never leaving the creature's side for more than a few minutes. Ben administered fluids and nutrients, supporting the Velthury's recovery while its body did the hard work of rebuilding. On the third morning, Katie woke to something warm and wet on her face. She opened her eyes and found the Velthury looking down at her. The creature had lifted its head for the first time since they had found it. Its golden eyes were clear and bright, filled with an emotion that needed no translation. It was licking her face. Its rough tongue moved across her cheek in slow, gentle strokes. Katie laughed and wrapped her arms around the creature's neck, burying her face in its silver fur. She had done it. They had done it. Against all odds, against everything the galaxy believed was possible, they had saved this beautiful creature's life. Katie looked at the Velthury and made a decision. She would call it Storm, for the swirling patterns in its fur that looked like clouds before a thunderstorm. It was a human name for a very alien creature, but somehow it felt right. Storm purred, a sound like distant thunder, and pressed its nose against Katie's heart. The bond between them had been forged in fire and desperation, and Katie knew, with absolute certainty, that it would last forever. Word spread through Vera Station like fire through dry grass. The humans had cured a skethworm infection. The humans had saved a dying Velthury. At first, nobody believed it. The station's alien residents laughed at the rumors. Such things were impossible. Everyone knew that skethworms meant death. The humans were either lying or mistaken, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. Station workers who passed by the cargo bay heard the sounds of a healthy animal moving inside. Security cameras captured images of Katie walking through the corridors with a massive silver creature padding beside her. Ben published his medical data on the station's network, showing the complete eradication of the parasites and the Velthury's remarkable recovery. Within 3 days, the news had spread beyond Vera Station. It traveled through communication relays, merchant ships, and diplomatic channels until it reached the Kovathi homeworld. And when the Kovathi heard what the humans had done, they came back. Katie was feeding Storm when the message arrived. The Velthury had regained most of her strength and was eating solid food again. Her fur had returned to its original beauty, shimmering like moonlight on water. She followed Katie everywhere, refusing to let the human out of her sight for more than a few moments. The station administrator contacted Katie personally. A Kovathi diplomatic vessel had just entered the system. Ambassador Tyrelvash was on board, along with their senior physician and a squad of armed guards. They demanded to see the Velthury immediately. Katie felt her stomach tighten with worry. She did not know what the Kovathi wanted. Would they try to take Storm back? Would they be angry that she had interfered with their sacred protocols? She had heard stories about Kovathi honor and pride. They did not like being proved wrong. She decided to meet them in the cargo bay with Storm beside her. Whatever happened, she would not hide. She would not apologize for saving a life. Ambassador Vosh was taller than Katie had expected. He stood nearly 3 meters high, with gray skin and 4 eyes that seemed to look in different directions at once. His robes were made of some shimmering fabric that changed color as he moved. Behind him stood 6 guards in ceremonial armor and a smaller Kovathi, carrying medical equipment. The ambassador stopped when he saw Storm. His four eyes widened, and for a long moment, he simply stared. The Valkyrie was sitting beside Katie, her massive body pressed against the human's leg. Storm's golden eyes watched the Kovathi without fear or recognition. She did not move toward them. She did not acknowledge them at all. The physician rushed forward with his scanner. He examined Storm from every angle, taking readings and muttering to himself in the Kovathi language. His voice grew more and more agitated as he worked. Finally, he turned to the ambassador and spoke in rapid, disbelieving tones. Ambassador Vosh listened without expression. Then he approached Katie slowly, stopping a few feet away. His four eyes focused on her face, studying her with an intensity that made her want to step back. But she stood her ground. He spoke in perfect English, his voice deep and resonant. He told her that his physician had confirmed the impossible. The skethworms were completely gone. The Valkyrie's neural tissue was regenerating. The creature would make a full recovery. Katie nodded but said nothing. She was waiting to see what came next. The ambassador asked her why she had done it. His people had followed the ancient protocols. They had given the Valkyrie a merciful death, or so they believed. To fight against such fate was considered foolish in Kovathi culture. It was seen as arrogance, a refusal to accept the natural order of things. Katie thought carefully before answering. She told the ambassador that humans saw things differently. Whereas people saw mercy in acceptance, humans saw mercy in fighting. She explained that throughout human history, people had faced diseases that seemed incurable. They had faced odds that seemed impossible. And sometimes, by refusing to give up, they had won. She told him about the plagues that had killed millions on Earth, and how humans had developed vaccines to stop them. She told him about cancers that had once been death sentences, now cured through stubborn research and experimentation. She told him that humans believed every life was worth fighting for, no matter how small the chance of success. Ambassador Vosh listened in silence. When Katie finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he did something that surprised her. He lowered his head in a gesture of respect. He admitted that his people had been wrong. They had abandoned this Valkyrie to die because they believed there was no hope. But the humans had shown them that hope was not something to be calculated by probability. Hope was a choice. It was a decision to fight even when the odds were against you. He then asked Katie to return the Valkyrie to Kovathi custody. He offered her a fortune in exchange, enough credits to buy her own starship. When she refused, he offered political favors and access to Kovathi technology. When she refused again, he offered her a position of honor on the Kovathi homeworld. Katie shook her head. She explained that Storm had chosen her. The bond between a Valkyrie and its handler was supposed to be sacred. Storm had formed that bond with Katie during the darkest moments of her illness. The creature had trusted the human with her life, and that trust had created a connection that could not be bought or traded. Ambassador Vosh looked at Storm. The Valkyrie had not moved during the entire conversation. She remained pressed against Katie's side, her golden eyes watching the Kovathi with polite disinterest. There was no recognition in her gaze, no longing for her former masters. She had made her choice. The ambassador nodded slowly. He told Katie that she spoke the truth. A Valkyrie bond was unbreakable once formed. His people had lost their claim the moment they walked away. He then made an announcement that echoed through the cargo bay. By the authority of the Kovathi High Council, he declared Katie Dawson an honorary Valkyrie handler, the first non-Kovathi to hold that title in their species' recorded history. The ceremony would be broadcast across the galactic network. The entire galaxy would know what the humans had done. Katie bowed her head in acceptance. Beside her, Storm purred like rolling thunder. The ceremony took place 1 week later in the main plaza of Varus Station. Thousands of beings from dozens of species gathered to watch. Holographic cameras broadcast the event across the galactic network, reaching billions of viewers on hundreds of worlds. Katie had never felt so nervous in her entire life. She stood in the center of the plaza wearing simple medical scrubs. She had refused the formal robes the Kovathi had offered her. She was a medic, not a diplomat, and she wanted the galaxy to see her as she truly was. Beside her, Storm sat with quiet dignity, her silver fur gleaming under the station lights. The Valkyrie had fully recovered. Her muscles were strong again, her eyes were bright, and her spirit had returned. Ambassador Vosh performed the ceremony himself. He spoke in both Kovathi and English, explaining the ancient traditions that governed the bond between Valkyrie and Handler. These creatures were not pets. They were partners, companions who shared thoughts and emotions with their chosen humans. The bond was sacred and eternal, lasting until death and perhaps beyond. He placed a thin silver band around Katie's wrist and a matching one around Storm's foreleg. These were the symbols of bonding, worn by Valkyrie handlers for thousands of years. As the metal touched Katie's skin, she felt something strange. It was like a door opening in her mind, and suddenly she could sense Storm's presence in a way she had never experienced before. She felt the Valkyrie's love, warm and vast like an ocean. She felt her gratitude, deep and genuine. She felt her loyalty, fierce and unshakable. Storm would follow Katie anywhere, protect her from any danger, stay by her side until the stars themselves burned out. This was what it meant to be bonded. Katie bowed her head as tears ran down her cheeks. She was not crying from sadness. She was crying because she had never felt so complete. The days that followed brought changes that Katie could never have imagined. The story of the human medic who had cured an incurable disease spread across the galaxy. News reports called it a miracle. Scientists called it impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. A Valkyrie that should have died was walking through Veristation, healthy and happy, bonded to a human. Other species began reaching out to the human government. They wanted access to human medical knowledge. They wanted human doctors to consult on difficult cases. They wanted to understand how a relatively young species, one that had only been traveling among the stars for a few generations, had developed such extraordinary determination to fight death. Katie found herself invited to medical conferences on distant worlds. She spoke to audiences of alien physicians, explaining the history of human medicine. She told them about the diseases that had threatened to wipe out humanity and how her ancestors had refused to accept defeat. She told them about the countless researchers who had dedicated their lives to finding cures, often dying before their work was complete. She told them that humans did not see death as inevitable. They saw it as an enemy to be fought. The aliens listened with a mixture of fascination and confusion. Many of them came from cultures that accepted death as a natural part of life. They did not understand why humans struggled so hard against something that could not be defeated forever. They asked Katie to explain. She thought about her grandmother, the veterinarian who had saved so many animals. She thought about the doctors and nurses who had worked through plagues, risking their own lives to save others. She thought about all the times humanity had faced extinction and had simply refused to die. She told the aliens that humans fought because fighting was who they were. They had evolved on a dangerous world, surrounded by predators and diseases and natural disasters. They had survived by being stubborn, by refusing to give up even when all hope seemed lost. This stubbornness was written into their very genes. It was part of their soul. But more than that, humans fought because they believed in something larger than themselves. They believed that every life had value. They believed that compassion was strength, not weakness. They believed that the measure of a civilization was not its power or its wealth, but how it treated the weakest among them. The Kovathi had abandoned Storm because their protocols demanded it. but Katie had saved Storm because her heart demanded it. And in the end, the heart had proved stronger than protocol. 1 year after the ceremony, Katie received a message from the Kovathi homeworld. The High Council had made a decision. They would be changing their ancient protocols regarding incurable diseases. Instead of abandonment, they would now attempt treatment first, using methods inspired by human medicine. They were building new research facilities dedicated to finding cures for conditions that had been considered hopeless. Ambassador Vosh had attached a personal note to the official announcement. He thanked Katie for teaching his people something they had forgotten. He thanked her for reminding them that hope was not foolish, that fighting was not arrogant, and that mercy sometimes meant refusing to let go. Katie read the message with Storm's head resting in her lap. The Velthari purred contentedly, her golden eyes half closed in contentment. Through their bond, Katie could feel Storm's happiness. The creature knew, somehow, that her suffering had led to something good. Her near death had sparked a change that would save countless lives across the galaxy. Katie looked out the window of her quarters at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, alien doctors were fighting to save patients they might have given up on before. Somewhere out there, creatures like Storm were being given second chances instead of being abandoned. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what humans had always known. Every life was worth fighting for. Every battle was worth attempting. And hope, no matter how small, was the most powerful force in the universe. She scratched Storm behind the ears and smiled. They had started something wonderful, the two of them. A human medic and an alien beast, abandoned and found, healer and healed. Together, they had shown the galaxy what it meant to never give up. And this was only the beginning.